It's my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker, Aaron Taylor. He has worked as the UX director at WGU. He brings over 3 decades of design experience across a wide range of industries, from publishing and news media to construction and genealogy. Over the past 9 years at WGU, he has served as a leader, a mentor, a hands-on contributor. He has built and guided high-performing UX teams that include strategists, designers, researchers, and accessibility experts, and he's going to talk a little bit about that. But what really sets Aaron apart is his passion for helping designers grow, not just in skill, but in mindset. And that is the exact reason why we asked him to be part of this live event tonight. He emphasizes understanding the why behind your work and tackling complex problems with confidence and making thoughtful, informed decisions. His work in establishing strong design principles, scalable processes, and meaningful cross-functional collaboration has helped teams to do their very best work. Beyond UX, Aaron is also a creative at heart with a background in illustration, cartooning, and marketing, and you may get a chance to see that a little bit during his presentation. When he's not working, you'll likely find him filling sketchbooks or out hiking, capturing photos of birds. But we are so excited to learn from his experience and perspective tonight. Please join me in welcoming Aaron Taylor.
I'm going to have to skip a few things. I want to really make sure that we've got time for a Q&A at the end, because I'm sure you've probably got some questions. But I have a theme for this today. I've titled this "Every Great Designer Has an Origin Story," and you're all at the beginning of this. I have some excitement for each of you as you're starting this journey. I'm sure you probably feel some trepidation and anxiety around some things, and learning some of the content. What awaits me out there as I earn this degree and become a UX designer. Can I do it? And so we're going to talk about some things today that I think will help you feel prepared, maybe lessen that anxiety a little bit. So with that, okay, I have to do it that way. This is me. I'm a UX leader at WGU. This is a joke. I'm sticking with the superhero theme. Sometimes I feel like a superhero in UX, even with some of the years of experience that I have. Lots of times, in fact, maybe a majority of the time, I feel like Clark Kent. All of us maybe feel some imposter syndrome, but it ebbs and flows with how I'm feeling in terms of being able to do what I want to do and how I want to accomplish things. I want to give you a real quick introduction to UX at Western Governors University. So the UX team consists of 11 UX strategists. We go between UX designer, UX strategists, not to confuse others about the 2 specific UI designers that we have at WGU that are specifically concentrating on visual design. We have a couple of dedicated UX researchers, and then also 2 accessibility experts. So I wanted to just do a real quick introduction of what is happening at WGU and the different roles that we have, that there are other opportunities out there beyond just being a UX designer, and we're utilizing those at WGU. There's always one constant when it comes to anything, and that constant is change. I want to just do a real quick introduction of my experience. It'll be relative to you, because you'll see some things through that that show that change. Back in the late 90s, I was a cartoonist. My goal at that time, I studied political science. I wanted to be an editorial cartoonist. I wanted to draw comic strips for newspapers. That was my goal. UX. If you had come to me and said UX designer at that time, I would have had no idea what you were talking about. So I started out in graphic design and did some work. I kind of checked off that bucket list. I worked at a newspaper and did some design and illustration and editorial cartoons. I came to realize that newspapers were fading out. This was in the about 2005. I could see what was happening. It was time to move on. Worked at a construction company in their business development, Jacobson Construction in Salt Lake, and did design there and some UX design. Moved on to into the field of genealogy and was a creative director for Roots Tech and some other genealogical and family history sites. Then I've ended up here at WGU and been in varying roles since I've been at WGU for the 9 years, a senior UX designer, manager of UX, director of UX. And spoiler alert, so Laura at the beginning said, I'm the director of UX at WGU. Big change just happened that impacted me, that there's some changes and a reorg that no longer has a specific UX team. And because of that, federated out into some of these different verticals and working on some specific things. I'm no longer the director of UX, but I am an individual contributor again, which has its pros and cons. And so even 3 decades in, I have to remind myself, be ready for change. And so I've done that. And so with change, I just want to put this out here. The industry is always changing. We're in a current significant upheaval maybe or pivot, I guess, when it comes to UX and technology just in general. With AI, I'm sure everybody's heard about AI. You've probably thought a lot about it, what it may mean. That's the nature of technology. It's the nature of being a UX designer. So always, if there's one of a few things that you may leave today as we talk about things, one of the best things you can do is to continue to learn. You're in a space right now where you're learning a lot, but once you've got that degree, look for those opportunities to continue to learn. What are the trends out there? Always be looking to the trends that are happening with UX and within technology, and staying abreast of those things. All right. So I wanted to talk about a couple of things. The first one, this is titled Cape Optional, Storytelling Required. And we're going to talk a little bit here about portfolios and storytelling. So you're in the midst of learning about UX. There's case studies that you're working on. They may be some things that you'll have an opportunity to put into your portfolio, be able to speak to them. I'm going to admit this person if that's okay. Portfolios are going to be a big piece of being a UX designer, and being able to tell the stories about you and the work that you do. A lot of junior UX designers think this: if I don't have metrics, if I don't have numbers, if I don't have data, I don't know if I can talk about my impact. But you can. We're going to talk through a couple of those things, and you're going to want to be able to talk about your impact. In years past, a portfolio for a designer before UX design, when I was a graphic designer, was showing a really polished piece at the end, and showing just that final crossing the finish line of what the piece was, and really shiny. For UX, it's about impact. It's about some of the decisions that you made, and some of the things that you were able to find out and the changes that you were in behavior that you were able to produce with your users. So if a student doesn't necessarily, or a junior designer doesn't necessarily feel like they have metrics and they're not thinking about impact, they may have case studies that end up like this, where they talk about, I redesigned the onboarding flow. I improved the navigation. I created new wireframes. Those are kind of a checklist of what you've done, a list of design tasks, but they're not talking about impact. Did your work make the experience better? That should be the question that you're asking yourself and the story that you would want to tell in your portfolio. So how to talk about UX impact. These are some screens that I copied. I want to make sure that I give this person credit, but it was really, really interesting. Frankie Kastenbaum shared this information, and I'm using just a little bit of what she shared, but how, if you don't have metrics, if you don't have numbers, there are things that you can do that will be helpful in terms of showing impact. One of the things that you can do is show the problem that you reduced. There was probably a problem that needed to be resolved. Are you able to show some things where that problem was reduced? Was it easier for the users? So this example that she shares, before users had to jump between 5 screens to complete onboarding. I was able to take this, and the onboarding flow was redesigned to 1-page experience with accordions instead of 5. So there was less friction there, right? There isn't like this hard data necessarily, other than, you know, that reduction of design that I produced, right? Show the insight that changed direction. Sometimes the impact is not the UI. It's the insight shifted the solution. So the example that she shares here, doing user interviews with these users, they didn't understand what the product actually did. And so there was work done on the landing experience, redesigning that, helping to clarify the value a little bit earlier, better understanding there. What a great story to tell. And again, like someone that's looking at your portfolio going, that's what we want. We want that reduction of friction. We want the better understanding. And then the last one, show what became clear. So confusion, a reduction of confusion can be something that makes a huge impact. Again, so this example, users struggle to complete a form because the error messages didn't make sense to them. And so this form had some hierarchy and some messaging that was redesigned with it. So this designer can tell a story that there's impact, that the users were able to complete that task that they were given without getting stuck. Okay. Be the hero they hire. Want to talk a little bit beyond portfolio. So portfolio storytelling is going to be something that's going to be vital for you as you're out making people aware of your skill set. You'll have it part of your resume as you're reaching out and applying for positions that are UX specific. You'll always want to have a current portfolio. You'll always want to have a link. Hopefully that portfolio helps you get noticed and an opportunity to interview for some positions. I wanted to let you know, in my previous roles as a manager, as a director, I've been a hiring manager. I've had to interview individuals that I'm looking to fill roles, and wanted to talk a little bit about some questions that I like to ask designers that give me kind of a window into how they work, which is important, what they value, how they approach things, what's important to them, how they might be good collaborators. And so I've compiled some of these groups of questions. I'm not going to go through each of these. I'll let you look at them. I may highlight, one that I find kind of interesting, or that may be one of my go-tos as I interview others for positions. Certainly, you'll walk through your project and end to end. You'll have opportunities to do that in interviews. Tell us about this, what you learned, type of a thing. I really like that second one. How do you define success for a UX project? How do you know if it was successful? What would you go to? What would you reference? What processes would you do to be able to say we succeeded at with this project beyond just creating something because we were asked to do it. Okay. So design thinking and process there. When it comes to research and insights, I kind of like the first one. How do you decide when research is necessary and what kind to do? In addition to that, like sometimes what do you do when you don't have the resources to do research? How do you justify that? Do you fight for it? What do you do when maybe you don't have the opportunity to do some of that stuff? So, but if you do, how would you approach research with some of the things that you're working on, and maybe give them a case study to solve there? Interaction and visual design. The last one, there's a lot of design systems. How would you approach working within a design system and evolving that? The second one's kind of important. It's interesting, what are your thoughts on accessibility? Is that part of your process? Why or why not? And how would you apply that to your work? Collaboration, communication. That first one's really big. How do you handle disagreements with those that you're working with, whether they're product managers, they're engineers, stakeholders? But I really like number two. This is one that I'll ask a candidate often, is how do you communicate design decisions to non-design stakeholders? How do you help them understand a space that you're familiar with and other designers that you can talk about things? How do you communicate some of that? How do you help them understand the importance of some of the decisions that you've made? Impact and outcomes. I talked about the second one already, and a little bit like how do you assess some of that impact? But what are some of the metrics that you're going to use to be able to see if it made a difference or not? Strategy and vision. Some things of like how you may approach the work when it comes to the direction that is being given to do that work, to have that impact. Are you doing some work that is short term? Are you always focused short term? Do you have an eye towards the long term and making sure that strategy plays out? Behavioral and reflective. I love this first one. What's a mistake you've made as a designer, and what did you learn from it? There's a tendency sometimes to feel like we always have to talk about our successes, and we can find success in some of the things that we maybe felt like we failed on, but when learned from, that had an impact or will have an impact as we approach work, some of our design work in the future. All right, and then real quick, this is AI, sidekick, superpower, or supervillain. where there's a lot that's maybe unknown when it comes to artificial intelligence. It's become a huge buzzword. There's a lot that we see in conversations that we have with others, and that we see on social media. We see potential impacts of in the industry. What does that mean in terms of a role of a UX designer? Will that change? Uh, will it be something that changes it significantly, uh, negative or positive? My answer to that is probably a lot of yes to all of that. Great sidekick as you start to use it. Maybe some of you have started to use some tools. It has some superpowers that you can really latch on to that can be helpful and make your work better. And in some ways, maybe it is a super villain. There may be some assumptions out there with people that work with UX designers where they can say, I can do that work now. Not that assumption's incorrect. And so there's a lot that we're still trying to figure out with AI and how to work with it. My philosophy is with AI, get familiar with it, but don't fear it. There's a lot to learn with it. There's a lot of things to be excited about. The impact of AI on technology and user experience. It unleashes some superpowers we have as UX designers, honestly. In some ways, it almost also brings us a little bit more to the forefront in some of the work that's being done. You may be learning about this in your courses. Some of the tools that you can use as a UX designer. Figma Make is great if you're starting to get into Figma. It's a great tool to start off at the beginning. I find some value in Figma Make and other prototyping tools to just be like, okay, I know I've got a problem to solve. How would AI solve it? And when it spits something out, depending on how well I prompt or not, in almost every case, it's like, oh, there's something that's kind of interesting there. I hadn't thought about that. It's got some legs. I want to play with it. But there's a lot of instances where it's like, well, you missed the mark there. I can't use that. And so I find a lot of value in kind of just using AI at the beginning to give me some insight into some things maybe I hadn't thought of before, and riff on that a little bit. But there's a lot there that's like, this isn't going to work, and that's where we as UX designers can do that evaluation with some of these prototypes that come out and go, that doesn't work because of XYZ, or it's missing this, it needs that, it's not following the strategy, because that's hard for AI to do, right? So there's also, beyond just kind of design prototyping tools, think of other ways that AI can be helpful to you as a UX designer. Documentation, kind of the day-to-day administrative stuff. Certainly that's helpful for people across all industries. Research and surveys. I recently used AI for some surveys, very helpful to get me, kind of from 0 to 75%, and then needed to kind of flesh the rest out. Copy and content could be helpful with that. Again, where human is needed with AI, strategic thinking, that's difficult for AI to do. We can evaluate things, what should be included and why when AI is creating some designs, and whether it's us doing that or some of our partners. Almost just as importantly, what should be removed and why. AI does a good job of plugging in a lot of stuff. UX design a lot of times is what feels like needs to be removed to make it a better user experience. We're at a quarter till. I'll just touch on these real quick. So give me 30 seconds. We'll open this up for Q&A and go from there. And this is something I polled. There were 5 things that someone had suggested about UX being relevant in an age of art, AI. Become the curator and not just the creator. Things can be made fast. We're the ones that, we need to think about systems and how they work. We want to be able to have insight into that. And we also want to be, mindful that we're not a servant to speed, but that it is just as important for the quality that's there. Um, uh, every AI system is only as smart as its interface. It does a great job of producing interfaces. As they get a little bit more complex, it kind of goes off the rails a little bit. Again, this is where we can come in and be UX experts. Be literate in AI. Don't don't shun it. If you've got anxiety with it, become familiar with it. Know what it can do. Know what it can do well. Know what it can have problems with, and know how it functions, so that you can be part of those conversations that will happen. Be human. Empathy, it's our superpower. And then finally, ask AI better questions. Think about the way that you prompt things. Think about your evaluations of what is output from AI, and being able to be those experts that were needed. UX still requires nuance. It requires context. It requires empathy. So don't forget about that critical thinking that we need to have as UX designers and bring to the table. More urgent now than it's ever been. Okay. Sorry to fly through that quickly. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can see you, if that works.
As we wrap up tonight, I just want to extend a special thank you to all of you who joined us tonight, and especially to Aaron for giving us his time and putting together such a great presentation. I know that there are a lot of thoughts probably going through students' heads as they're going through this, and how to prepare for interviews, how to prepare with their portfolios, and what their future might look like as a UX designer. So we really appreciate you being here tonight, for being willing to field some questions. And he also invites students to reach out to him on LinkedIn if you have future questions. Thank you again.